You are now listening to The Spearsy Spin with your host, Mike Spears.
Che affrontano I problemi della ricostruzione europea dal nostro punto di vista.
In dieser englisch-französischen Welt, da existiert die sogenannte Demokratie. Sie wissen ja, diese Demokratie zeichnet sich nun durch Folgendes aus. Es heißt, dass das die Herrschaft des Volkes sei.
Chief Justice Roberts, President Carter, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, fellow Americans, and people of the world, thank you. We, the citizens of America, are now joined in a great national effort to rebuild our country and restore its promise for all of our people. Together, we will determine the course of America and the world for many, many years to come.
Hi, folks, and welcome to the Spearsy Spin. Well, there you have it. You had Adolf Hitler, Benito Mussolini, and, of course, Donald Trump. Now, you might say, well, why would you start the show off that way? Well, I started the show off that way because that's the way a teacher in upstate New York was trying to teach a classroom of students. She decided that these students needed to know about fascism, so she linked President Trump along with, Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. And we're going to talk more about that. As a matter of fact, we have a clip through Fox News. As a matter of fact, I think it was Todd Starnes did the report of a couple of women who are addressing that now because they're tired of that whole agenda, the attacking from the left agenda. But before we go to all that, when this rolled up and I said, "Yee-haw, I can't wait," because I myself years ago was blindsided in a middle school by a what I call a liberal attack, and I want to tell you what I went through, and then we'll go on with this. But for those of you that know me, most of you already know the story. But for those of you that don't, I did spend a day or two in school. I have opened up a textbook or so dealing with a little bit of psychology. I might fool you. I might know a little bit of something. But here's the story. Years and years ago, I was transferred to a different area. And I don't want to mention the area because some of the folks might still be there. And the last thing I want to do is embarrass anyone, although I should. And my son was 11 at the time and was in school in this particular district. And my wife and I had gotten a notice to appear at the school like at 11 o'clock in the morning or whatever to talk about, our son. And so, I was out and about doing what I do, and actually I had to cancel a trip out of state, wherever it was. I don't know. It doesn't matter. And then get my wife, who was also at her job, and to go talk to the school. And, I figured, well, this is nothing, maybe, they want to talk about academics. They want to talk about, whatever, who knows, right? So, my wife is in her work clothes, which, she was dressed professionally, of course. And I was in a suit, so that's wonderful. And so, okay, school, and we have to go to the conference room, which is like a boardroom, I guess, a small boardroom in a smaller corporation. And we get everything I'm telling you here is 100% correct. The names are changed to protect the stupid. I shouldn't say that, but it's true. I mean, I tell this story and I still get mad, but this story ties in with the rest of the story you're going to hear. So, we go into this boardroom, if you will, and the principal is there, the guidance counselor is there, the school psychologist is there, the middle school principal is there, the school nurse is there, my son's teacher is there. Hell, I think the janitor was there. I mean, I can't recall, but he might have been.
America was founded to escape the elites, but today they run our country. There is no longer any difference between our politicians and the elite media who report on them, and the Hollywood elites who bankroll them both. They work together in some newsrooms and boardrooms and Washington backrooms and star-studded champagne fundraisers to decide for the rest of us what's news and what's not, what's true and what's not, who gets protected, who goes to prison, who gets our money, and who gets our vote. These elites threaten our very survival, and to them we say, we don't trust you, we don't fear you, and we don't need you. Take your hands off our future. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's safest place.
And so we're going to call his teacher Mrs. Jones, just to make it easy. And so we're sitting down, and I take my top coat off. And so the principal says, well, welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Spears. We're here to talk to you about your son. And, I'm looking around at all these folks sitting around this table, and I'm thinking, what the hell could he have done? I'm expecting him to tell me he's involved with terrorists or something. So the principal says, I'm going to let his teacher tell you, and then we'll discuss things. Now, keep in mind, none of these people know me. They have no clue who I am, background, education, qualification, certification, nothing. All they know is that, I'm the father of this boy. And for all they know, I'm on the road selling Tootsie Rolls to 7-Elevens. Okay, so here we go. So the teacher says, well, Mr. Spears, your son threw a snowball. Okay, and the ball hit such and so in the back. Okay, and your son pushed a girl in the hall, and when he pushed her, she fell into the wall. Okay. And then when I talked to your son about pushing the girl, he said that it wasn't really him pushing her. He did have his hand on her shoulder at the time that he tripped. And as he tripped, his momentum fell against the girl, thus pushing her into the wall. I said, okay. Now, keep in mind, my son's 11. And she said, the other thing your son does is he questions me about a lot of things that I'm teaching. And I'm like, okay, And Mr. Spears, I don't know what you do for a living, but your son uses vocabulary words that are way beyond his years. And I think sometimes he uses that vocabulary list to try to belittle me in the classroom. I said, oh, okay. And so why we have you here today is because I'm pretty sure your son has ADHD. So at this point, I look at the teacher and I say, well, Mrs. Jones, let's take a look at this and see what we can discern from all this, because I might be able to speak to this a little bit. I said, you're talking about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which is actually a mental illness. And here's the thing I'm trying to understand. Could you tell me, how did you diagnose my son as having ADHD? Because this is the month of September, it's late September. Last month was August, and you don't remember me, but you were working at the local grocery store, and you rang my groceries up 2 or 3 different times because I had to keep making trips because I just came into town. I remember you, and you probably don't remember me because I wasn't wearing my work clothes.
I've been told that Black women aren't supposed to support the Second Amendment. I've been told I shouldn't want to be able to protect myself. I shouldn't teach my fellow students about their rights, and I shouldn't speak my mind. Thank God I didn't listen. To all of those who have called me a sellout, an Uncle Tom, or a pawn for someone else, here's what should scare you. I never changed my beliefs. I woke up and realized that you don't represent them. You don't speak for me, and you don't think for me. I am not the victim you need me to be. And I'm talking to more women like me every single day. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I am freedom's safest place.
Hi, folks. Times we live in today are scary. Religious freedoms under fire, racial divide never more evident, political powers fighting, foreign countries looking to exploit our country, news media reporting unfair on issues, folks searching out the truth. I listen to the news, then I listen to the Spearsy Spin. Mike Spears has experience, education, determination, and grit to get what's going on in our country. Listen to Mike Monday through Friday. I'll listen. Hope you'll be listening too.
So, again, Mrs. Jones, if you could, would you explain to me how you came to make this diagnosis, okay? Because I'd just like to know how you did it, just so that I know. And by the way, at this point, she's staring at me because it's like, gee, this guy in the suit and tie, he sounds like he might know something. So I asked, I said, well, all right, did he have difficulty in paying attention? Did you have to do anything to help control his behavior? I'm just asking. I mean, could you tell me, does he daydream all the time? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Does he forget things? Does he lose stuff? Is he always squirming, fidgeting, or just can't sit still? I don't know. Does he talk excessively? I know he talks a lot because he's my son. Is he talking excessively? Does he make constant mistakes or careless about? I'm trying to understand, Mrs. Jones. I'm just trying to get to the point here. Does he climb on the wall and hang from the light fixtures? A risk taker. Does he have any problems, with the other kids, making friends, and just can't get along, can't make relationships? I'm just asking you, Mrs. Jones, so that I know, so that I can understand how your diagnosis of ADHD came to be, because typically that's diagnosed by a psychologist, a psychiatrist, sometimes a pediatrician. Once in a while, a family doctor. Only GPs typically don't want to do that because that's not their area of expertise, Mrs. Jones. So, and I had to take this a bit further. Now, remember, I'm surrounded by liberals. And I said, now there's about 3 types of ADHD, Mrs. Jones. And again, they're usually diagnosed by a doctor. And the diagnosis comes usually, once the doctor has had some time to spend with the boy, or in this case, a child, to find out what symptoms might be prevalent. But you probably know this, having worked at the grocery store. Yes, I was a real... Oh, well, you understand. So, was he, predominantly inattentive? Because you said that he asked a lot of questions about your subject matter as you were teaching it, and that certainly doesn't suggest a child with ADHD to me, but then again, I'm not the teacher. It sounds as though, if he's having a discourse with you, so to speak, that he must be communicating, and he must be making comments, which means he's committed to what you're saying. So, well, he's not apparently daydreaming out the window or something. And you really didn't tell me anything. I mean, you whipped off this diagnosis, and I'm just trying to find out how you got there. I actually get mad talking about this because I cannot believe I'm talking to, and don't get me wrong, I love people that work at the grocery store. It's just that you cannot go from running a register at a grocery store in August and September, sit down, with someone that, has got, 30 years, behind him here, and saying, well, your son has ADHD. So we go on, and Mrs. Jones, does he sit for any amount of time, periods of time? I mean, I don't know. Is he running around? Is he jumping, climbing on things? And she's sitting there, and she knows now. I mean, I'm making this presentation here, but I can promise you my presentation within that setting was 100% professional. And believe me, and I'm not saying this to try to sound big and important, I'm not. When I have to, I can put the dog and pony show on. I can do that. So I asked her, I said, well, can you tell me what was the presentation? In other words, what did he present as far as symptoms? And she's just looking at me. Well, he threw a snowball. Okay. He threw a snowball, and he pushed a girl. I said, well, okay. But so far I haven't heard anything that sounds like ADHD, and that's what I'm digging for. I mean, that's your diagnosis. And so we go on, and Mrs. Jones, the teacher, is staring at me, and now I have the school psychologist who's rubbing his head because he gets it. He's caught some buzzwords I've thrown in. He gets it. He understands. And the school psychologist pushes his chair back, and now he's got his hands behind his head, and he's actually sitting there with a smirk on his face because he knows what's going to go down here in just a little bit. So, and I asked Mrs. Jones, would you agree, or do you accept that the symptoms that you really haven't told me about are going to interfere with my son's development? In other words, is it going to cause issues in relationships? Is it going to be problems for his education? So tell me the main symptoms that he has. I haven't heard anything from you yet. I mean, I'm sitting here waiting, and I'm throwing this out to you because I want to hear how you got to this diagnosis. You haven't said anything about hyperactivity, nothing about inattention. You didn't say he was impulsive. You didn't say that he was forgetting stuff all the time. And, of course, I know he's a little disorganized because he's an 11-year-old boy. One of the other things I might have asked you if he had a listening problem, but apparently he doesn't because you said he corrects you in class. And you relate that he uses vocabulary that is above and beyond his years. And you didn't say that he was bouncing off the walls or standing on the desk or throwing airplanes, whatever, or that he had problems being quiet, with the exception of that he challenges you. So that's where I'm at, because if you can convince me, Mrs. Jones, I can talk with him and you and the school board here about some behavioral therapy, because I'm pretty good at that stuff. I know a little bit about it, and I think we could probably work together on that. Now, if you think that maybe I need some parent education with regard to my son and his issue, because apparently you feel the issue is ADHD, well, I'd be glad to sit down and have you educate me, Mrs. Jones. And, I do know that there's some educational assistants out there through the state of New York. Maybe we could call on those folks, and maybe they could help me a bit. And maybe he's not eating right. Maybe he's got some nutritional issues that, is causing this ADHD you're talking about. Maybe he doesn't exercise enough. So I suspect that the next thing you'll want to tell me is that he needs to be medicated. And, of course, the only meds that most teachers even associate to ADHD is Ritalin, and that's only because that is the drug of choice. Now, Mrs. Jones, I think that you can probably tell this probably wasn't the best way to present this, and now I'm going to tell you what's really going on. What's really going on is you have someone in your class that comes from a family where there are professionals in and around this child constantly. He has a very good vocabulary. He's extremely bright. He's extremely talented. He's extremely well poised, both mentally and his abilities to communicate. What it sounds like to me, Mrs. Jones, is that apparently a challenge from an 11-year-old child has upset you, and you can't handle that, and you even said that you thought he was belittling you in the classroom. And I don't know how an 11-year-old belittles an adult, especially an adult that's supposed to have at least a bachelor's degree, but maybe so. You've got all these folks here. We're having this meeting. The school psychologist, even he's laughing at you. Don't call me about this again, because if you do, I'll gladly take my son to 3 different psychiatrists. Matter of fact, you folks can choose them. And I will pay to have him do the step-by-step analytic process to find out if he is ADHD. And if he is, I'll be the first to open up a bottle of Ritalin and say, here, have a pill or a slug or whatever it is. But if not, I'm going to request that you resign, because my belief is that you are going to be a problem teacher. Now, as soon as that rolled out of my mouth, the school principal said, well, Mr. Spears, we don't want to have any type of antagonistic back and forth. I said, excuse me, you called me here under false pretenses. This woman last month was bagging my groceries at the local store. This month, this is her first year of teaching. She's in the first month of teaching, and she's whipping out, a diagnosis of ADHD. I gave her every opportunity in the world to back that up. And your own school psychologist is sitting there, and he's smiling, and he knows. Look, don't ever call me again. And I mean that sincerely. And if you can't handle him, let's take him to the next grade and challenge him a bit. But don't call me on this stuff.
Hello, this is Captain Jake Sparrow. See, you've already met this dastardly scoundrel who calls himself Mike Spears. That would mean that you're listening to the Spearsy Spin night. By my reckoning, if you give a thumbs up and subscribe, this would make you one of the crew. Savvy?
Okay, I'm sorry. I even got permission to run the show longer. As a matter of fact, it's stuck in 2 models here. I guess it's whatever the models are. But I put that out there because that's my personal experience. And again, when you're in a room full of liberals and, look, what I think about is what happens if, that same scenario went down, but someone else was in there. In other words, the dad that, he's working at the garage, or, he drives a tractor trailer, or maybe he's a farmer or a plumber, and he doesn't know a bunch of psych terms and things. So these folks are just going to railroad him, and the next thing you know, his son would be put on probably Ritalin because they're going to recommend a general practitioner. And, that's why, folks in mental health do not want general practitioners handing out psychotropic drugs, because while they're, well-intentioned, and don't get me wrong, I think they are, it's not a question of just handing out that psychotropic drug as much as it is follow-up talk therapy. And, sometimes the drug of choice isn't the drug that's needed. And that's why, GPs just don't want to see them doing that. But here's the other side. In a critical situation or an emergency situation, the GP can order, your basic tranquilizing drugs, yada, 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 which is fine until someone could get to see, a psychologist, psychiatrist, or whatever. But now we're going to turn our attention to the school up in Albany, or near Albany, New York, and that's what this story is actually about, because this school in Albany, New York, has decided to teach a class, apparently. Actually, the school's in Saratoga Springs, which I actually know that area because I actually had to work in that area. I worked all over the place. Actually, I thought the Red Roof Inn was my home for I don't know how many years. But anyway, so this teacher up in Saratoga Springs, New York, at the school, decided that she was going to teach a bit about fascism. And she compared President Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler and Mussolini. Now, the problem with that is that the child goes home and apparently says, hey, did you know that President Trump is like Hitler and Mussolini? Well, the mother just happens to belong to a group, and this group is, anti-liberal antics in the classroom. Now, I'm not going to ruin it for you here. Todd Starnes, who, he's a contributor and works for Fox News and does the commentaries and so on and so forth. And he's also heard on hundreds of radio stations. Great man. He also has a book called The Deplorables Guide to Making America Great Again. So he has a clip here that we're going to play for you. It's courtesy of Fox News. I know we're running long, but we got it blessed.
Right now are Julie Tellstone and Marnie Messett. They started a group called the Conservative Chicks to keep those teachers honest, and they joined us today from Albany. Ladies, good morning to you.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so Julie and Marnie, how did you first hear that apparently one of the teachers, through a PowerPoint presentation or something like that, was comparing Donald Trump to Hitler and Mussolini?
Okay, Steve. Well, prior to the election, we formed our Conservative Chicks group, which is a group of like-minded conservative women who came together due to our love for politics, our support of our president, and our friendship. And what grew out of our group was a group acting as advocates for both students and parents who are dealing on a daily basis with the political liberal indoctrination that's going on in our school system. We wanted to provide students and family with that mode of communication if they weren't comfortable going to the school directly.
Okay, so that's why you got started. Tell us about this particular instance. One of your kids came home and said, hey, you're never going to believe what I learned in school. They compared Trump to Hitler.
Yes, actually I received an anonymous email with the link to the website, which I immediately yes, this is a public school district website and I immediately sent this to our school district, the Board of Education, for their review.
And Marnie, you had a child in that class, right?
Yes, well, it was more than one class because it was a school-wide presentation. It was held by different classrooms, but my child did sit through one of the presentations, yes.
Well, you know what? The superintendent defended the lesson. He said teaching about fascism as a political movement in the context of World War II is part of the curriculum. And then when asked about how Donald Trump factors into World War II, the guy had no answer. So you look in at this, it does look like indoctrination to some. Is that how you see this?
Absolutely, and things like this, we have more stories. We could actually do additional segments with you, Steve. But the fact that the Board of Education met last night and this was not discussed, not one word was spoken of the national coverage and the parent concern over comparing our president, who I teach my kids to respect, the presidency of the United States. Not one word was spoken about comparing our president to brutal dictators who were responsible for killing millions of innocent people.
Julie and Marnie,
that's not okay.
I got a feeling after this segment where you're on worldwide television, I got a feeling they're going to be talking about it later today in your school district. Julie.
Okay, so you get the idea, is that you can no longer sit back and just hope that everybody's going to do the right thing. Trust me, there are agendas out there, and they are not in your favor, okay? The liberal agenda is live and doing well. And many times you have to understand is that the teachers out there have been indoctrinated and soaked and marinated in this liberal gobbledygook for so long, they don't even know that they're doing something that's not right. They don't understand. But, if you listen to yesterday's show, we talked about a professor with a PhD out of Drexel University that's talking about killing white people. And he thinks that the Haitians should come and kill all the white people. Folks, you just can't believe this stuff. If you could just sit in my seat and see the things that roll up on this screen. I mean, we have to take our time to figure out exactly what thing to cover. It's not a question of what can we cover. It's a question of, oh my God, which one of these do you want to cover? But thanks for being with us, folks. And remember, if you hear this stuff going on in the school, don't be afraid. Challenge it. Thanks for being with us. And we'll be listening, or you'll be listening, I guess. I'll be talking tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.